I had my NDE and as an adult, and I saw myself in these other bodies on other planets in bodies that look very different than the one I'm wearing now, and one that was very similar. And it really made me start thinking about this and how we're really souls living lives on different planets doing different things. We don't have to be human. Human is an option on a plate full of different options.
If our souls or our higher selves are playing a video game, and that video game is to take a piece of our soul, which is if I'm grabbing a video game and I start up the video game, I'm taking some of my awareness and I'm putting it on this game, and I'm now this character in this game. And here I am playing this fun game, and I'm playing it, and all of a sudden, imagine that character looking at me and saying, I see you. I know you're playing this video game.
Yes.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Soul Inspired. Today, I have Angela Harris with us. She's returning again. We've had a conversation in the past around near death experiences. Today, we're going to combine that with some talk around UAPs, possibly orbs, and other things that happen. Thank you so much, Angela, for coming back on the show. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you.
Likewise, we've already been having great conversation.
Exactly. And I may use some of that. It may pop into some of the feed from the from earlier conversations. You
Yeah.
were talking a little bit around the fact that for a long time, UAPs, again, I'm going to use some terminologies that might trigger people if they're uncomfortable with it, but aliens, extraterrestrials, whatever words we want to use. And I was saying before that some of these words are uncomfortable in the sense of what they've become to us from the way that we've been fed. So, for instance, alien, as you mentioned, is kind of a secluded feeling. It kind of like, or sorry, it pushes people away. And originally, the movie Alien was oh, it's alien. It's
Oh, yeah.
and at that time, I don't think it was looked at the same, but it's kind of brought got its own energy over time. Even extraterrestrial, you think of ET, ET phone home, extraterrestrial. It's always been kind of this ideology of kind of poking fun at the idea that there's something else besides us in this universe, which I remember going back a little bit when YouTube first kind of started taking off. I would go on and just search for anything that was UFO related because I was a big X-Files fan as a kid.
Oh, me
And
too.
were you? And I
Yeah.
remember the first thing that threw me off, I'll never forget the video, and it's probably somewhere out there. It was a NASA feed. And I remember I went on, I'm looking up UFOs, and I couldn't find anything that was the typical UFO thing that I was looking for. But instead, I found this satellite feed from NASA that had come out around this time. This is maybe 10, 15 years ago, 12 years ago. And it was a bunch of these, uh, I guess we'll call them UAPs or UFOs, just flying into our atmosphere in and out. And they're big circles with a split down the middle, and they're coming in and out. And everybody was in the comments, saying, "What are these things? That's not what a UFO is. A UFO is a disc with what we've been, told they are."
Yeah.
And perhaps they are, but perhaps there's a lot of different variations of what these are, right? And so
Right.
I just wanted to kind of bring that into the conversation because I remember the first time I was witness to it, I thought, "Oh, that's not what I imagined." And it actually almost looked more spiritual in nature or um because it kind of had a translucent look, almost not in our physical reality. It wasn't this silver disc with, green aliens inside the windows or anything. It was like this kind of translucent circle just moving in and out of the atmosphere. I'm just wondering if you were ever interested in any kind of UAP talk growing up.
Not so much.
No?
No, I mean, I was definitely raised in that culture of, that's not real and we don't really even talk about it. But we liked sci-fi, and so we'd watch Star Trek like it came out and my family was in the theater that weekend, or at
Right.
least the next weekend. It was everything to us. And yes, I love the X-Files. When I had my NDE and as an adult, and I saw myself in these other bodies on other planets, in bodies that look very different than the one I'm wearing now, and one that was very similar. And it really made me start thinking about this and how we're really souls living lives on different planets doing different things. We don't have to be human. Human is an option on a plate full of different options. And so, as I was reading about this and bumping into things here and there, and I think it even might be part of the conversation in the book UFO of God. What I started thinking about is the multi-dimensionality aspect and
Mm,
how, as a soul, if we're having out of body experiences and astral traveling, and, in the Seth Speaks series, he talks a lot about going home in our dreams and communicating. This indicates a level of, if you want to use the term technology, complication, quantum physics, that is so beyond anything that we're even starting to think about, starting to glimpse, that we can't apply what we understand as humans to things like what you're talking about. So, the way I understand it now, and I hope I understand it better in the future, is that that is something, someone that is interdimensional or multidimensional, that is coming into our space so that they can explore us, we can explore them. I don't know what their purpose is, and I'm not going to guess, but there is something there. But it's, how are you perceiving it? What are you capable of perceiving right now from your space as a human being? How are you perceiving it through your human mind, which is very affected by cultural conditioning and, being prepped for it?
mm,
And then also, as it's coming into this space, this dimension, how is it coming in? Is it fully coming in? Is it kind of coming in and out? Is it perhaps wanting us to see it a certain way, or are we perceiving it the way that we want to perceive it? So you talked about the silver discs, right? The pie dish kind of mode of transportation, I think is a good way to say it. And, if that's what everyone in the 50s and 60s told us it was supposed to look like, then we're culturally conditioned to believe that's what it's supposed to look like. And so if we see this multi-dimensional or interdimensional being or beings appearing in the sky above us, how are we going to perceive that? We're
mhm,
going to perceive it as this big silver disc because that's what we've been taught to see through our human experience, through our human mind. And so I think that's what we see. Now, in UFO of God, he sees orbs or, round balls of light. I have some, ideas on that as well, that perhaps, it's again kind of just a glimpse of something coming in and out, that is the light from the other side being perceived by him and others because others have seen it. Jim Fisher, one of my friends, has been out there to see it. So it's really, to me, an aspect of this interdimensional, multidimensional, super high, well beyond anything that we as humans on this planet right now can create or understand. Although I think there are some really smart scientists out there who probably are getting close. And that perception side of it that leads us to see different things in different ways and for us to see it kind of coming and going as well.
mm. You touched on a few really interesting points there. You mentioned the orbs, the colored orbs. I've said this in previous episodes. I was fascinated when we had the UAP, we had the drone things happening all through New Jersey and through the different states, and then also in other areas, other countries. And there was all these. I started kind of going down that rabbit hole and trying to figure out what is going on. I think I've come to my own conclusion what that is, and I don't think it has anything to do with UAPs. But what it did do, that's just my opinion, of course. All these things are opinions. Um, what it did do is it started having people watch the skies more. And I started noticing that I started seeing more videos, whether it's YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, wherever it was, on orbs. And there were people, and there maybe still be people out there doing it. I just haven't had time to go and research this, but there are people speaking to the orbs. And there was a fascinating video I saw of a woman and her son, and they had a video up into the sky, and it was this orb, and it was just pulsating. And they were kind of really excited to see this, and they started communicating with it, as odd as that sounds, and they started communicating with it and even asking it to change colors, and you could see the color that they were mentioning kind of coming into play. And the boy just sounded so excited, he couldn't believe this was happening, right? And it kind of came to me at that point that we're dealing with something that is more like what you're mentioning, where um, I truly believe what's going on is that I've always believed that there are, I'm going to call them ET or extraterrestrial just because that's what I've grown up to know them as. I think that there's ones that are aware of what we're doing. I look at humans as kind of infants in this whole grand scheme. That's not to say that all ETs are kind. I think everyone's growing, and we have good and bad energy through everything. And but I do think they're obviously more advanced. I would think they're more advanced um, in regards to their progression of evolution. And if they're watching us, it's probably quite a show to watch where we are currently, because I think we're at a pivotal point. And I believe what's happening is they are showing themselves in different ways. And I think that the orb that, like, I've when I growing up looking into UFOs, I don't remember ever hearing of that, of there being orbs. It was always the metallic disc. It was the disc, or it was actual ships. And what I've come to realize through talking with people at NDEs, it's the same sense when someone has an NDE and they go to the other side. And grandma, you know, uh, I don't know, any name, put any name in there, comes to you in your NDE, and she looks just like she did at a certain age, and you go, "Oh my goodness, it's you," and you recognize her energy. And there's been many people tell me then they know how they can shift into these other either beings or different ages they want, or and say, "Oh, yeah, I've had multiple lives, and this is the different they've this is what's happening." And if they're able to shift in such a way, then I think we're dealing with the same energy in regards to UAPs and UFOs. I think that they have evolved into a dimensional resonance in energy that is able to change. And if we're tuning into that frequency, we're able to witness this. I'm trying to understand why I'm able to see that through a lens of a camera now. This is the part that kind of gets me a little tripped up. And then I
Right.
say, are we growing as a whole? Are we evolving as a whole if we're able to now see these things? Because 10 years ago, I'd never heard of this. So just, I don't want to give that as a little
Yeah.
feedback. I want to know what your thoughts were around that.
Yeah. So I completely agree with everything you're saying. And it comes back again to people even just being more comfortable with, more aware of talking about our spirituality in connection with consciousness and instead of religion. So that's the shift I'm seeing. I'm seeing a shift, and it could be I've had an NDE and my everybody knows it because I talk about it all the
Right.
time. I'm addicted to it,
Right.
talking about spirituality. But so maybe that's, my life is built around that. I've built my life around that. But I have seen a shift. And I think we can see the numbers as well, which I'll talk about in just a second. I've seen a shift from spirituality being connected to religion to more so spirituality being connected to a consciousness that is the one throughout all things. the
Mm,
river that flows through us all. And so, what I was talking about before with the numbers is during the pandemic, which was horrible, good things came out of it. And one of the good things that came out of it is we had a lot of time on our hands. And even since then, people are having conversations like this one that are out there for anyone to listen to. So, podcasts, webinars, things on social media, articles. I'm seeing more in popular mechanics
mm,
articles about this type of stuff, which I still look at the headline and then I look at who wrote it and I think, wow, popular mechanics has an article on this. That's powerful. It's a numbers game then. So, you know the algorithms for YouTube and all of the, podcast providers that are out there. The more there is of that content, the more people are watching it, the more it becomes a thing to feed it to other people
mm-hmm,
who might be even slightly in touch with it. Those keywords that we put into our SEO fields to get it to fly. Everybody's doing such a good job with that, such as yourself. And I think that that is causing it to spread like wildfire. I was volunteering at the food warehouse, and we have a neighbor who, their kid has gone to college. They moved into a smaller home. I hadn't seen her in probably 2 years. And I bumped it, and I had seen her in the food warehouse previously. But that morning, she was watching YouTube and she saw one of my stories. And she came right up to me in the warehouse and said, I had this. And maybe it's because we knew each other and it somehow connected it,
mm,
even though it had been quite a bit of time. Somehow she bumped into it. And, I really feel like from what she was saying, she was really curious about it and wanted to watch more. So that's just an example of
mm.
one person. So it starts to become more comfortable for people, become more a part of the conversation. And so, yes, I really believe that it lends itself to a shift of humanity's understanding of it. And, I don't think awakening is such a wrong term for that because it's really a peeling back of the veil that we've been under, that finding out from underneath the covers that are laid upon us when we come back. I mean, I had a very long, profound NDE, even though I was only out for a few seconds on this side. But when I came back, I didn't immediately remember it all. It took a little while to fight my way back out from underneath the covers,
Hmm.
however that works, to get back to all of that. And again, these stories, listening to other people, going to sharing groups helped me do that. So yeah, I love the way that you put that, Joe. I think it's spot on.
I love also just using the word awakening. And I'll say it like this because it's going to lead into something I was going to talk about was the word disclosure. I like
Yeah.
awakening better than disclosure. And the reason is when I hear the word disclosure, I I I feel like that's a never-ending trap. Because it seems like there's always disclosure. It's always disclosure. It's just, for instance, every time something comes out, oh, there's a new whistleblower talking about they've seen things and they're gonna, okay, and then it gets big and everyone's like, oh my goodness, it's coming, and then there's this um, disappointment because we create in our mind what disclosure will look like, and then what happens is it
Yeah.
doesn't look like that and we're immediately disappointed. And not only does it lead to disappointment, it leads to discouragement of even understanding or even opening your mind up to the possibility of what actually is going on. So you shut it down, and now it's no longer in your belief systems or feelings or anything. You just let it go. And then it kind of keeps waving like that. It keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. So when you say awakening, the word awakening, I feel is a longer process. It's something that happens over a longer period of time. It's disclosure feels very like, oh, on June the 6th at 10 a.m. we're having full disclosure and we're all going to know the answers to the world. Whereas like that's what it feels like when you hear the word disclosure. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
just me, but I hear awakening and I'm like, I have no control over that. but I'm part of the ride in this awakening process. Let's see where this leads to. And awakening sounds I don't feel like there's an end. Awakening feels like it just keeps going. Much like when
Yeah.
people go to the other side and they get all this knowledge and then they come back and they go, I felt like I was just getting a piece of what everything is, and there's more to it than even I can imagine. And if I brought that back with me, my mind would everything would explode. It's too much. So meaning an awakening as a human being here, we're evolving and awakening over time, and I like that feeling towards. And I think it has to do with the UAP. With, I think there will be a time in my lifetime where I have more assurance in knowing that there are other beings that are around. I think there will be something that will eventually kind of happen, but I don't look at it like disclosure. I look at it like I'm going to allow this awakening process to happen. And when we're all aware of it, we'll all know. And that's about as far as I go with it. That's where I'm at with the disclosure movement.
Yes. Yeah. And I love how you're saying that. Disclosure, when you were talking about it, really brought to mind for me that that's maybe a part of the process of slowing down our awareness that these other beings are coming and visiting us. We were talking earlier about how the government kind of has, I don't want to say the government controls things, but what we see, what we get through all of those channels from people who are professionals and that's what they do, to the media, to us and how we talk to each other about it, what's written in books, all of it. I think the disclosure word is a very deliberate word that helps to set that stage of exactly what you're talking about right now. That, oh, we're going to disclose something. And everybody has their different level of expectation there.
Mhm.
And then it's always a letdown, no matter what your expectation is. And so then you have this mental connection to this letdown. And then when you hear UAP, NHI, alien, extraterrestrial, spacecraft, spaceship, any of those terms, your brain immediately then kind of goes, oh, it's right back to that thing of it's not real, it doesn't exist. If you see something like that, then you're crazy, just like with NDEs. Oh, you went to the other side and you saw God. Well, no one has the right to do that. I've been told by my religious leaders. So therefore, you must be crazy and you need mental help. It was the same tactic with people who saw any craft of any kind, any being of any kind through the 50s, 60s, 70s, into the 80s, 90s, and probably even now in certain places.
I was going to, I have about three different branches that I'm trying to decide which way to go with. And I'm going to go in a really strange one for my audience. It's around cases of abductions, but tied into NDEs. And I'll explain it like this. I've always wondered through, years of just watching random videos and reading stories of people who claim to have been abducted or have these experiences. I've always wondered if there's any parallels between the near-death experience and the abduction. And I say it like this for a reason. There's been plenty of times where there's been stories. We all know some of the famous ones that are out in movies where there's a group of people, let's say, and something appears, call it a ship, whatever it is, and one of them is abducted, and they're looking at their friends, and they're all kind of in this space of almost like their consciousness is no longer within their body, I'll say. And the person has this experience aboard a ship or aboard whatever it is. We generally then, when we're hearing the story of what happens to the individual on the ship, it sounds very almost negative, sounds scary. If you dig really deep, it may not be scary. It could be, there could be a purpose to it. But what I wanted to say was, I, f- I feel like there's something going on with those beings. that either they can manipulate consciousness or they understand consciousness different. And I mean, that goes down to quantum physics and all these things. But there is this point where there's loss of time a lot of times. These aren't our regular. This isn't just us waking up, having our coffee, going to work. Like when those moments happen, they're moments that stick with them because it's so out of world. It's so different. Same thing with people who have NDEs. They leave their bodies. They're in a completely different realm. And I'm wondering if you think that if there's a possibility that these other beings, if they've kind of tapped into a different type of consciousness or something that they're able to communicate with us in order to, like, the weird thing is, it sounds like they've taken, say, a body on ship to check it out or whatever, but there's a shutdown of their beingness is shut down in a way. And I've tried to understand it, and I don't even feel like my words make sense when I'm explaining it. But I'm wondering if what you feel around that. Do you feel like they're in touch with something different than we are and able to do that?
Absolutely. And it goes back to what I was talking about with seeing these orbs or ships or the tic tacs that are more common now. It's it's a perception and it's a connection to consciousness, which really is a lot of perception. So, I haven't been abducted myself, so I can't speak to that in any way. And I haven't read enough on it that I would feel confident
Hmm.
speaking about it other than what you've been talking about. So now when I look at that, I think about it as that intersection between non-human intelligence, which is consciousness for me, from my perspective, and the UAP, so unidentified aerial phenomenon of any type. And you end up inside one of these UAPs. Well, if the UAP then is supposed to be traveling distances that we can't even begin to comprehend, then it has to be using that interdimensional, multi-dimensional kind of astral travel. So basically, traveling as consciousness itself.
Hmm.
So if you then are removed from the planet's surface, and I don't think you even have to be removed from the planet's surface, and you're put inside one of these, you know, multidimensional, interdimensional crafts, which are a type of consciousness that is cre- condensed in one place and recreates itself in another space, right? So
Hmm.
it's not physically going from point A to point B. It doesn't do that. It's like on Star Trek, right? You basically break down all your cells and then rebuild them somewhere else. Or you don't even take your cells with you. It's just your consciousness decides, I'm not going to be in this space anymore. I'm going to be in this space. However, that's happening for that particular situation. You're on board one of these. So just by being on board it, being in that space, you'd have to be more in your soul space, your consciousness state, releasing from your physical body then. That's one take on it for me. The other take is, yeah, I think that there's probably, I mean, if they're able to travel like that, then again, their understanding of what we call science is much, much far more advanced than ours. And so, could they manipulate our consciousness? Absolutely. I do believe that would be the case. And yes, I definitely have thought about that connection, right, between when we have an NDE, that is multi-dimensional travel for
Hmm.
our soul. And so if you're traveling multi-dimensionally then and leaving your body here, just as I did, but I don't go home to where people go during their NDEs or heaven or so many other terms that are out there. You instead go to another dimension that's maybe more in line with this one where we do have physical bodies that we jet around in on the surface of planets, then it's a very similar thing there because you're doing multidimensional travel.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting too. And I was thinking to myself, a lot of times when people hear about abductions, things like that, that's kind of the fear side of everything, right? There's always fear that is pushed, we're going to call it like an agenda. There's always this agenda of fear that always happens, and it kind of takes us away from what's actually going on. I've always been the type to kind of step back and step back and step back, and I try to look at it from a bigger place. And I think if these things exist, if these abduction type cases exist, which they likely do, because there's so many people that have reported them over the years, then the next question is, well, why would they do that? If these are people, if these are beings that are so kind, and why would they do that? Well, I think my brain goes to a couple different places. One of them is that number one, they probably either have advanced themselves to a different point that they're not like a human, or they may have been a human at one point and now they're not, or maybe they've never been that way and they're interested in the way that we have emotions or we have different things about us. So they want to figure that out. The other idea is that, I believe in that in the cosmos, or that there is this free will, especially anyone who's higher and higher in consciousness understands there is a free will at going on, of course, without hurting or harming. And so, in a way, maybe these abduction cases are situations where they're able to bring someone on board. And if we don't, possibly they're able to dig into that person's consciousness and understand what's going on in the world. It could be a way that they're able to tap in a little bit further if they're witnessing things. I've thought about that because, like, how else would they know? Maybe they could tap into everybody. What's better than actually having that person with you and being able to tap in, get a little down memory down. Look what happens in NDEs when people pop out of their bodies and they're all of a sudden experiencing the lives of the people they've loved and how they felt and all these things. These are completely different concepts than we understand as a human being right now. As just Joe or Angela. Like, that's who we are. But if they know how to actually manipulate that and feel what that, they could literally grab somebody and live their life in a moment's time through any type of necessary way of doing it. And that could be research. What do? We go to Mars and we pick up dirt off the ground. This could be research in their way, but they're not traveling from rock to rock. They're dimensionally traveling, possibly. So this is where my mind always goes, and that could be what's actually happening. I I just wanted to mention that, but I did want to mention the disclosure thing because I think it's really important that people who are putting out truths about disclosure and all these different things, or have ideas, or maybe they channel other entities, or yeah, aliens, whatever you want to call them, to be really careful about setting dates and precedents on like actual time frames, because
Mm.
it completely destroys your credibility, and it also puts you in a situation where if you have this drive that you're trying to accomplish, you ruin it when the people are set up to fail. So I see this all the time online. Oh, big mothership's going to appear on this date. Everybody get ready. And it doesn't happen. And it completely destroys credibility in what's actually going on. And I get really frustrated by it because I'm like, what are people doing? I mean, of course, there are probably some people out there that are just trying to get notoriety, or they're trying to get famous. I don't understand. I've never understood that piece of it, but I just I hope that people stop doing that, but I don't know if that'll ever stop, because there are people out there that are out there for a different reason doing what they're doing. Um, yeah, I don't know if I just wanted to mention that. So, do you think though, personally, look at the world right now, look at the way, I mean, here we are living in this crazy political lifestyle and everything. Sometimes I look at this stuff going on in the news and I question what the point of half of it is, especially when you start really understanding who we are. Do you really think the public would be ready though to be completely, if there are higher powers that be that know of a higher intelligence, of know these things, do you really believe that we are ready to know about that at this time? I'm just wondering what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, I think Chris O'Connor would be a great person to give an answer for this.
Mhm.
And what I think he would say, and what I have come to understand, is that, and especially what we're seeing now, we have a lot of different people with a lot of different viewpoints in a lot of different stages of readiness for it. And we're here on this planet living our lives, barely reaching out into the universe. we've made it to the moon and we're super stoked about that. And we want to make it to Mars and how amazing that would be and how advanced we would be. We were just talking about how these entities that are coming to visit us, this non human intelligence, has greater intelligence than humanity.
Mm.
Humanity doesn't want to hear it, but the evidence speaks to it. So when I look at it, I see this intelligence that has the ability, and I'm going to speak to something here. So when we talk about this, we're really talking about expanded states of consciousness and interconnectedness. The interconnected part is the consciousness and NDEers, even, people who have been abducted, they all speak to these themes of love, unity, being together as one in the universe. So these super intelligent beings, compared to the minds we're filtering life through right now, are going to look at us and they're going to consider whether or not they should be seen. They're going to consider if humanity is ready or not. Is it a safe time to do this? Or is it a time to instead guide us? Is it a safe time to show up as an orb in someone's backyard?
Hmm.
Is it an okay time to show up as, several different ships flying around having fun like birds in the sky over, you name it, anywhere, your own home that you're sitting in right now? This is how I see it. So I don't see it as humanity's in control of it.
Mm.
I don't see it as is humanity ready for it. I think we're heading in that direction for sure. I think it's more, are they feeling that we're ready for them?
Yeah. And I was going to say that I think that the possibility is that because we're in this awakening process, that these orbs, the UAPs, I think the reason why they picked up so much is because I really do believe there's kind of a monitoring process going on where they're, of course, yes, they can shift between dimensional things. This is all sounding, sometimes I talk and I'm like, this sounds craziness, but this is this is really the reality of it. And it's because for me, growing up, again, going back to what we said, I've been conditioned to think if I talk this way, it's completely absurd. It's like this is crazy talk. But if they're shifting in and out of conscious or in our dimensions, they can come down to our level and kind of see where we're at as as a society and how what would happen. We talk about religion. What would happen in religions if they just all of a sudden showed up? And they don't want to, what if they are a being of higher consciousness or they're about love, why would they want to see us go into some kind of destructive mode? They wouldn't want to see
Right.
that. So I think that there could be a monitoring during the spiritual awakening happening, and it could be kind of like a light, um, kind of instead of running a faucet, you're just kind of like dripping, just little drips of like here, a little sprinkle of this, a little sprinkle of that, just to get our minds in that direction before it's too much for us. Because even when I'm talking and explaining, sometimes I'm thinking something, but I can't. My words don't have the ability of saying what I'm trying to say. So, and I wanted to talk to you also about there was something called the Sky Watchers that's going on right now, and this is what I was mentioning before we started recording is there's a group of whistleblowers and they've started something called the Skywatchers. I'm in no way affiliated with them, so just mentioning them, I'm just saying it. But today, talking about dates, releasing dates, today is a date where they were going to be releasing some information around the work they've been doing. And the work that they've been doing, it has to do with, David Grush and all these big people that came out in front of Congress or whatnot to tell these things exist. They're they're using an ability of I don't want to I'm going to use the word summoning UFOs or orbs by using meditative processes, it seems like, to bring in UAPs or UFOs. And they are trying to get this on video, people to witness it, to see how people are doing this. Again, these are things even 10, 15 years ago would have been laughed at and said that that's going to make you seem like a crazy. So this is supposed to start coming out, I think today, the 7th. So probably by the time I release this episode, it'll be beyond the 7th, but for anyone listening, again, the problem with dates is you get a date and you go, okay, this is the day everything's going to change. Well, that doesn't mean that. It just means it's a little. It could be a little sprinkle. It could be that little drip from the faucet, not the full exposure to it, right? So I find it interesting. This is the same people where there was recently an article or I think it was on News Nation. They released a video of an individual who picked up this egg type craft that seemed to be not the same type of material that we're used to. And while he was carrying this craft or this egg shaped craft, he started to become one with the egg. He started to become one with the craft and feeling its emotion and feeling it. And I don't know if it was a female energy or what it was, but it felt like that in itself was some type of biological entity or some type of energy that was coming through the craft itself, not the entity that might be inside the craft, let alone the actual craft. So we're talking about something completely out of ordinary where our helicopters, for instance, are made of metal, and you have a embodiment of a person inside using that. In this case, it could be that the craft is the actual entity, and the inside may not even be that. It may be some kind of AI generated ET. I don't know. It all gets kind of out there, but my point is we might have things backwards. And so if people are able to meditate and bring these things in, and I mean, we're dealing with something far beyond what we have imagined. And again, they're called the Skywatchers. So I didn't know if you've heard of them, but that's supposed to come out really soon, and if not today.
Yeah, and that's so important and speaks back to the nature of reality in both instances. So the nature of reality and interconnectedness, remote viewing, that's something that, the government has admitted they've done in the past, that they had success with it. And this is, in my view, a type of remote viewing where you are using a meditative state to remotely search for some kind of entity that is not of this planet and to ask that entity to come and reveal itself to you. That's beautiful. And that to me is the the direction really we need to be going. You mentioned doing things backwards, and that's kind of flipping that around, right? We're not being passive and waiting for them to show up. We're starting to say, hey, I honestly, truly believe that you're there. And I want to see you. I want to speak with you because that helps me understand. And hopefully, other people understand too the true nature of reality and our true interconnectedness in this entire, I want to say world, but it's well beyond that, right? This existence that we're having all together outside of heaven, the other side where source is from source itself, if you wanted to put it that way. So that's really great to hear. And I'm super excited to hear that. And I'm feeling that that's going back also to that search for meanings. You were talking about a person who was able to actually hold something in their hands. That's so powerful. And yes, spiritually transformative experience for sure, because it changes everything you know about everything as a human. So that would renew your purpose in life, your meaning for life. You'd have some personal growth and spiritual awakening. It would deepen your understanding of consciousness. And then you would be making that flip that you were just talking about, where you'd start to understand it's not about me being passive, it's about me taking active engagement in this search, in this conversation that's going on with this non human intelligence that's coming here. And when more of us can make that connection, kind of flip that search for meaning from the very humanity based one that we've been living to a much more, off planet, um, consciousness is one with literally everything on this planet, not on this planet, we can then speak to these other entities that are coming and help them understand that we are ready to see them.
Hmm.
But until we get more people in that direction, I just don't think that's going to happen. And so, as you were saying, when people are setting dates, well, this is a free will thing we're talking about here. Are you free willing yourself out of con your state of mind now and opening up your understanding of reality to move forward in that way? Until we can do something like that, I think we're kind of rigidly stuck where we are with
Yeah.
not having them being ready to reveal themselves fully.
And speaking as someone from as myself and possibly a lot of the listeners, I haven't personally had an NDE. I haven't had an experience of otherworldly. I've had something appear that did change my perspective on things. It didn't make sense in my reality, and that was as far as I got. And I think maybe deep down, that's all I wanted in this incarnation. Possibly, maybe it would have been too much for me to handle. But the reason I bring that up is I talk to a lot of people who've had NDEs, spiritual transformative experiences, ayahuasca experiences. I mean, you name it. I could put a whole list together, things that have altered their state of understanding of really who we are at our core. When I speak with individuals like yourself or people like that, when I bring up the topic of UAPs and things like that, they don't bat an eye at it at all. In fact, they go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." It's like that kind of conversation is very easy to have. If I bring this up in respect to just people who've been living a day to day life, they haven't had too many experiences, it can be a little frightening, and because you're taking people out of their comfort zone. And in fact, that's why, when people are listening to this, even if I have friends or family, if they happen to come upon like an episode like this where I'm talking like this, might be like, Joe's lost his mind, like something's wrong. Well, if enough people think that way or feel that way, then we aren't ready. And so really what it comes down to is there has to be a slow revealing during an awakening until we get to a point, I believe, where it won't completely shatter someone's reality to understand that there's more going on. I think some of us enjoy the simple things in life. Some people, I mean, even yourself, I'm sure there's some days where you just want to
Oh,
turn
yeah.
all this off and you just want to go do something, go for a walk or go bowling or go to a
Peace.
trip, take a road trip, just get out of your head with everything.
Yeah.
It's because it's a lot. We're human beings. We can only handle so much of this. But I also would say though, we are moving in that direction and everyone's got to hang on because you can't reverse. There's no reverse here. We're in this direction. If there is reverses, I think it's kind of like bumps in the road, kind of like, oh, something's trying to make us stop from going forward. But good luck because once you kind of start that train, it doesn't really stop. I don't feel that at least, and I just hope that we can get there. On a very safe course. I wanted to mention one other thing with you. I wanted to kind of veer left a little bit, and you may or may not have heard of this stuff, but it's around the same kind of fun, entertaining conversation. Let's put it that way, and it's around the pyramids. And there's recently been a lot of talk around some private researchers from, I believe, Italy. I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong. That have used a known satellite type imagery uh, technology to see that there are large cylinder shaped cylinders going. I don't know if it's miles or what it is down from the base of the pyramid into the ground, wrapped in coils of some sort, and they are seeing them through this imagery. And when it first sparked, it was everywhere. And I noticed it's just like everything, it comes out and it's wildfire, and it's like, oh, here it comes. And then every day it's less and less and less. And people go in and say, oh, this is fake. All these things come in and say it's not real, it's not real. And what it does is it's like a fire starts and we throw sand in the fire, we put it out. And then now here we are sitting with this incredibly life altering, human existence changing news
Yeah.
that no one's talking about. That's,
Mhm.
I mean, in respect to like news and things, right? Instead, we're focusing again on tariffs and uh, all this
Yeah.
stuff. So, you know, when I see something like that, that's why I'm saying I feel like, all this information is just like it's ready to come out. It's like little things are starting to kind of like, hey, we're trying, we're seeing how much you guys can handle. But when we put out the fires like that, we're not ready then. We're putting it out the fires. We're not ready to know what's going on. But there's definitely something going on. I'm wondering if you heard anything about these pyramids or at all.
I did see that um, on social media. And yes, I agree that it's, the don't look over here, or, I can't hear it. I'm not ready for that. I don't have the foundation to accept this right now. And so I'm going to step in and do what I can to do the, don't look over here, throw sand on the fire, as you said. So, yes, I do think it kind of gets buried. Um, as long as we've been here, which isn't very long if you adhere to the timeline that we have that we're given, how can we say that that's not possible? Because again, just going back to that whole, our nature of reality is built upon our experience as humans right now. And until we can, lift up that veil and peek out from underneath it and look at this broader understanding of the nature of consciousness, the nature of reality, then how can we say it's not real?
Mhm.
Because we're viewing it from behind this veil. We're not seeing the full picture because we're blocked. That's what the veil means. That's why we talk about this veil. So then, if you step out and you say, I'm just going to rip the veil apart. I'm going to throw it to the side for just a minute. And I'm going to think about this from this broader view of there are other beings, other souls in other bodies doing other things. And they've been in these bodies doing these things for an unknown, untold amount of time. Then is it possible that they were here at some point while humanity was here and we don't have that information revealed to us right now? Or they were here before humanity existed and they created this when we have so many ties to this. So I'm going to talk about one of those ties. So there are ruins in South America. There are ruins in the Middle East. There are ruins in, the north of Europe. And people have talked about how these are all basically like satellite towers. That's a way to talk about them, where they would convey information. Two of them, when the sun sets on one, it immediately comes up on the other time wise. They're completely in sync on the
Mhm.
planet. So that's just an example of something that, you know, humanity built. I mean, we would think that they did. And then what about all the hieroglyphs that are out there as well that would give us some information that beings that were far more advanced than we were at the time were here helping us with things by information that's literally written on the wall, literally written on the wall,
Right.
if you read it that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I remember as you were explaining all that, I had this flashback, and it was me and my grade 9 class. And I don't know what class it was in. It must have been like a historic history class. And I remember going in, I sat down with my friends, and they turned the lights down and they put a video on, and it was the creation of the pyramids. And they explained how these pyramids were built. They even had animated Egyptians carrying the rocks, and they showed how they would put them in place and get them exactly and precise. And they had all this happening. And I remember the entire time watching it, thinking, "There's no way. There's absolutely no way." Like the entire time, and this is what we're supposed to be learning about the pyramids. And this was the first time I'd been introduced to the pyramids. And I remember going through the whole thing, and the teacher turned the lights on, and kind of looked around, and he kind of like looked at us, and I went, "What?" Like I like put my hand, I said, "You got to be kidding me." Well, some of the kids were on in line with what I was saying. Other ones were like, "Joe, like what's the big deal? Like we just learned, who cares? Like that's what they did." But see, it was my brain never could I was always listening to knowledge and then picking it completely apart to understand it. So as they're doing this, I'm like, well, how would they do that? Like I would be asking all these questions. First of all, I'm looking at the timeline, how long ago was. I'm knowing what they build now. I don't see them going around building these massive pyramids anywhere. Yes, they can build large skyscrapers, but with a ton of mechanical equipment in order to do that. Well, they didn't have mechanical equipment. So there's a lot to it that I was questioning immediately. I don't know if I've also always felt like this odd connection to the Egyptian times. I think a lot of us have that connection. I think a lot of us were there during that time, and so I remember watching it and almost having kind of like a disbelief and almost anger, almost like a why are you lying? That feeling. And so I was just nonstop, and the teacher was kind of getting, I think, irritated. And I wasn't that type of kid. I generally would just kind of listen, but I was like, no, 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 that doesn't make any sense. I just kept on about it. So it just kind of brought me back to that. I wanted to share that little memory I had because I'm sure a lot of us have learned things growing up where it doesn't it doesn't kind of compute. It doesn't make sense to what we would believe would be the case. I wanted to know more and I wanted to dig in more, but everywhere I searched, it kept giving me that same storyline. I've found in the last 10 or 15 years, maybe a little bit longer, a little more, because History Channel's come out with things. You know, they'll mention, oh, there's these myths that it could be this. And I'm like, oh, I'm into the myth. I'm more going that way because it makes more sense than this other way. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I find it fascinating that they're finding this. I don't know if we'll ever get the real answer as to what that is until we're ready. But yeah, it's kind of a situation where it all kind of connects, and we don't really know why this all happened. And like you said, those we could have been more aware of UAPs back then. We were definitely watching the skies more. You know, I think there's even different. I don't know if it's tombs or what they are, where they were just couldn't be looking at the skies all the time. So how many people do that now? No, we're doing this on our phones.
Yeah.
We're inside glued to a phone instead of outside glued to the sky. That's natural. This isn't natural. And there's something that we're doing. There's a reason for it. And maybe some of you are watching this right now this way. So I appreciate you tuning in.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think we all have to start becoming more aware of that. And and it gets frustrating because I think a lot of us know what's going on, but we can't verify it. We can't verify it. And I'm someone who always needs, I like verification. I'm a truth seeker. And um, I don't know. I sometimes wonder to myself if I would have had like an NDE or something that's not physically real, completely mind shattering. I think I would have gone the road of literally sitting on the top of a hill and just becoming a monk for my whole entire life. I'm not kidding. I have my fourth child on the way. I live a life. I'm a family man. I run businesses. I do this kind of stuff. I talk spiritual with people. But I think to myself, if I would have known something of higher dimension, let's say, at a young age, it would have led me in a completely different direction, and I must not have been meant to do that. I had to bring in these beautiful souls, these children, these because I think I just would have went completely. I'm just gonna sit with energy, and I can see why people do it.
Yes. Well, it
Yeah.
takes you back home. It's comfortable. It's where you want to be. But yeah, my take on it is, I came here to do what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it full in. Meditation is great. It reminds me of who I am. It connects me back to the other side. I can listen much better because I don't have all this life stuff going on. It's it's kind of shutting the door and being able to just go home for a few minutes. But I don't want to do that for 2 hours. I don't want to do that for a full day. I used to want to go and, maybe live in an ashram for 6 months or a year or something and really remember myself. But right now I'm in a space where I want this. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying eating the cake and, going out in the sunshine for a walk and just being in awe of the beauty of this planet. Of this weekend was prom, seeing my daughter in her prom dress and all of her joy and feeling of love and being with her friends. And it's as an American mom of teens, it's not very often you get to see your child with their friends anymore. So
Right.
that was a really special time. Yes. So yeah, for me, it's a different take than some people have on having had an NDE, being aware that I'm a soul jetting around in a human body. You know, looking at it from that standpoint, it's a lot of fun. We live out in the country, and I don't know how many listeners have watched James Bond, but one of the more recent ones where he's with, I think it's Vesper, he's driving through the countryside chasing her while she's kidnapped in the back of a car. And it's these rolling hills and curves, and he's in an Aston Martin. I don't have an Aston Martin. If somebody wants to let me borrow theirs, I'm up for it. But I do have a fun car to drive. And when I do that, I just put myself in a different state of letting my soul out to play and realizing I'm in a, essentially a space vehicle, my human body,
Mm.
inside another space vehicle on the surface of some planet I'm not from. And here I am driving around in the dark,
Hmm.
quickly, not ridiculously fast, having fun, just feeling the physics of it, the joy of it all. And I try to do more of that in my regular life, including, when I'm just hanging out in the kitchen, looking at it from that viewpoint of I came here to enjoy this life, putting as much of that into what I do as I can, into my free will and my choices and all that. But yeah, I think what we're talking about today really speaks to how, as humans, we have very rigid boundaries between life here and the cosmos, not even stepping into the full expansion of consciousness, but just the cosmos around us. And we're having more and more conversations that are public, not in somebody's kitchen, but public out there for other people to view on their phones by themselves with their earbuds in. No one else can hear it while they explore how these human built boundaries between us and the cosmos and consciousness don't actually exist. Those boundaries are being broken right now by these conversations that we're having. So thank you, Joe, for being one of the people who's bringing that to us and helping to break those boundaries.
I love everything you just said, and it spoke to me in so many ways when you started speaking around the idea of coming here and enjoying life and doing the things you're doing in this vehicle. And I don't like to often bring up the simulation theory or any of that stuff because I think it sounds so it sounds so gray and dark, and I don't know what for me, it doesn't feel good. But I'll bring up kind of my generation grew up playing a lot of video games. And I look at it like if you were to really think about this, let's put it in a perspective of human being. If our souls or our higher selves are playing a video game, and that video game is to take a piece of our soul, which is if I'm grabbing a video game and I start up the video game, I'm taking some of my awareness and I'm putting it on this game. And I'm now this character in this game. And here I am playing this fun game and I'm playing it. And all of a sudden, imagine that character looking at me and saying, I see you. I know you're playing this video game.
Yes.
That makes the hair on my arms go up. And that's usually my verification of truth. That's the way I've kind of seen things. So that's essentially what could be happening here is that we are here playing, doing what we're doing, evolving, right? Learning and growing, our higher soul. And at the same time, we're at a critical moment of amazement because we're coming online to the fact that we are higher than bigger than we think we are, which means we can soon possibly interact with our higher self in a way that's very interesting because we can still be here and yet there. And that kind of back and forth is going to become very interesting as we evolve. And I'm really interested to see how that happens in my lifetime, possibly beyond if we have multiple lives. But it's an interesting concept because that's the way I see it. I appreciate you coming on and talking through all this today. It's been an amazing conversation. I know we were supposed to have Chris O'Connor on with us today. Hopefully, we'll figure out a way to get him on, or I can have a discussion with him around this topic. But we made this work, and
Yes.
yeah, there's so it gets so out there. I have one good friend where we really dig into this stuff, and by the end of it, I'm exhausted. I'm like, I'm just like, holy, and I never understood the exhaustion through discussion until I started having this show, until I started really having these really deep conversations. It's not to say that my
Yeah.
day-to-day conversations with other people aren't exhausting. But I don't think they're meant to be. Otherwise, it'd be very difficult to I can only do so many of even these type of conversations because it's overwhelming at times. Does this make sense? Do you, on a closing note, do you get that at all through the work that you do?
Yes. Yeah. These deep conversations. And I think, again, there's that connection to soul. And so, more than just a mental workout, I think that our soul is in there saying exactly what you just said a second ago. And I think the way you put it is so beautiful to say, your soul is looking you in the eye and saying, I see you. And it's feeling that, there's that connection of I'm finally breaking through the human mind and I'm getting to come out and have a conversation with people and play. And it's so good. But I think it really wears out our bodies
Mm,
as well.
yeah, yeah. So to anybody working in the energy work or around individuals like yourself, like you've been working with ions for quite a number of years, and you talk to people all the time. So it's good to take the time away from it, enjoy that ride in your car, enjoy your downtime with your kids or whatever
Yes,
you do that makes you just feel at peace with the world. I've been learning to ground
absolutely.
myself. So getting back to the music kind of grounds me as well. So this has been a lovely conversation, Angela. Thank you so much for
Yes.
coming on again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. It was fun. Thank you. My frequency is like much higher.
Oh,
Thank you.
nice. You're very welcome. I always turn to the audience and say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired.
Yes.
This is why we're doing this work. If you know somebody who's into this stuff, send it along their way, and hopefully we'll get more people on that we can have these conversations with. So, thank you again, and we'll see you next time. So